We are live on YouTube. Cool. So welcome everyone to the first 2021 meetup Kubernetes Pune. We have Sayan with us. He works at Kinvolk, and he's going to talk about Flatcar Linux, and what's happening beyond the Core OS's initial work. So over to you, Sayan, and I'll be muted. Let me know if you need anything.
Sure. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so hello everyone. Happy New Year. Hope you had a great New Year, and hopefully everyone is staying safe around this pandemic. And thank you, Vishal, for the introduction. So today I'll be talking about Flatcar Container Linux, ways that we have been building for some time now. It's been, I guess, 2 years that the work and the building that has been happening. Before starting off with the main talk, let me introduce myself. So I'm Sayan Chaudhary. I work with Kinfolk. I joined Kinfolk in April 2020. So most of my time at Kinfolk has been during the pandemic phase. So the company is based out of is a remote first company and is based out of Germany. We have a couple of teammates in India. But in case you're wondering like more about Kinfolk, so it's a Berlin-based company. It's remote first, as I told. We have a very small team. But we are very remotely distributed. We have folks in US, we have folks in Europe and India. But most of the majority of the folks, I would say, are in Germany. And the reason may be because the roots of the company are in Germany. Talking from the perspective of community, we are really and highly active in the community. You would see our team members in various communities, be it Kubernetes, OS, or other container initiative projects. The company started at around in 2015 and has been totally open source from that time. Everything we do is basically open source, and we are actually behind a couple of amazing conferences like the Cloud Native Rejects, All Systems Go, O4B, and we also do a couple of meetups in Germany. So we would say like we are the experts in the Linux security, containers, Kubernetes domain, and most of the work that you'll see that we do totally reflects that work. And the company actually started off with doing consulting work, and we have had some really good companies in the past that the company has worked up with, like Microsoft, Shift Left, VWorks, etc. And this is where like the story starts or flows ahead, because one of the companies Kinfolk was involved with was CoreOS. Now, before moving ahead into my talk, I would like to like share on how I am planning to, or what are the objectives I plan to like talk about in this talk. So primarily I will be talking about like what was the ideology behind CoreOS, the projects that CoreOS had, and how we are planning to take it forward, like introduce people to this, because a lot of people know about containers, or have been the container growth in the last few years has been tremendous. And I would like to share how Flatcar Container Linux can help you with that journey. So yeah, back to CoreOS. So as I told, like Kinfolk was involved in with CoreOS, and one of the pillars, which I would term as simple, but it was a kind of a gigantic ideology that they had, was secure the internet. And this is something I have seen them writing in various blogs. There's media channels that they really focused on securing the internet. But what they what does this even mean, like secure the internet? So I will go deep down about what this means later in the slides, but I would like to share like a few points from that part. So it particularly boils down to reducing the attack surface, immutable file system, having an immutable file system, having principle of least privilege, something that we really rely upon, and then we have the automatic updates in the in systems in place, and finally the secure container runtime. And this is where the story gets very interesting with the secure runtime, because this is where Kinfolk actually collaborated with CoreOS and uh, worked on building the RKT, the container runtime engine. uh, so another thing they really relied upon, or they really evangelized, was Giphy, which is Google's infrastructure for everyone else. um, they actually, I would say, maybe even coined that term. Like they used to talk about this a lot. And just quoting Alex Polvi, who was the CEO of CoreOS, Giphy is a style of managing infrastructure the way hyperscale companies like Google operate, with infrastructures designed for maximum robustness, scalability, security, and reliability. So what does even mean? So Google over the years has mastered like having an architecture which is like container based and distributed, and have demonstrated the values and the methods of deploying in this large distributed system. So these are the things which is probably known now, but before, like 10 years back, this was something which most only the hyperscale companies may be having. And this is like making things together, like the secure the internet thing, and implementing, like bringing, how do you bring that particular stack into place. So they really want to have this thing for Google like infrastructure for everyone in the community. And this is where the CoreOS brought in the stack for Giphy. So in the beginning, they brought in the CoreOS Container Linux, which was the OS specially optimized for containers. Then you have the container runtime, which was secure and we now known as RKT or Rocket. Then you have the SCD, which is a key value store started by them, later moved on to Kubernetes. And uh, then we have Tectonic, which was a container orchestration tool, which firstly they started with like Fleet, and then quickly moved to Kubernetes. And finally, they had Quay, they built basically a container registry with a security scanner. And everything was well, like the fish was on its way, on its adventure in a big ocean. Everything was going really great, but then came a big fish and gulped it. So Red Hat acquired the CoreOS, and then a year later, a bigger fish, IBM, came and gulped it too. So basically, Red Hat was acquired by IBM. And the state of the CoreOS stack today is that the CoreOS content Linux is deprecated. I guess I saw the post today itself that they also stopped the Twitter handle, like there would be no updates. But essentially, like they announced it right couple of I would say couple of days after the acquisition, that the end of life is coming near. It happened in May 2020. Then in September 2020, the images were removed. Everything that they were working on was merged into Fedora CoreOS, and the commercially available support was through OpenShift. The state of RKT was that it was contributed to CNCF, and but later it was retired in favor of Containerd. Uh, you have etcd, which was also contributed to CNCF, and it became, as I told, a core component of Kubernetes, and is like under very active development. Tectonic reached its end of life and merged with OpenShift 4, and Quay was open source by Red Hat in December 2019. So this is kind of the state of the CoreOS stack today, and this is where we plan to take the ideologies of CoreOS forward. So uh, one of the CoreOS engineers took the ideology of tectonic and created typhoon, and out of which we built our kinfolk forked that off and started building on it to create locomotive. It's a Kubernetes distribution. And you have the container Linux, which we forked off after the acquisition happened by Red Hat, and Flatcar container Linux was born. So this is how the kinfolk and the open source kinfolk and its open source projects are structured. So you have Locomotive, which is heavily inspired from Core Tectonic. You have Flatcar, which is like a minimal Linux distro for Core Container Linux. And then you have like, we have like contributors in Systemd, RKT, and other projects we have as well, like people working on kernel and stuff. So now before we dive more into like what is container Linux, like you might have the question like what is actually like what so good about it. So the core property of a minimal the core property of container Linux is a minimal distribution with really less number of packages. Since you will be running most of the apps in containers, so a lot of packages actually become redundant here, which and in the context of a like a traditional full fat Linux distro, because you really don't need those packages, you can simply remove those packages. And this actually leads to another thing, that you have less number of softwares to manage then. And the lesser number of softwares you manage, the lesser the surface attack surface area is. So lesser so in case there's a CV, so in that case, like you really don't have to bother much in and if you have a lot of packages in place, then the number of CVs you attend to becomes longer. And the other thing is like you really don't need some provisioning tool like a Chef or Puppet to deploy your instances. It's very simple and repeatable in nature. The second component is immutable. Having an immutable file system. So in Flatcar, you have like the whole USR partition immutable, and you cannot like write or update the partition. And this helps a lot of things in place, that you really don't have to bother about updating a lot of things in there. You just control so what is given to you is given to you. And then this also reduces, again, since we are security first, so again it you have lesser number of CVs which are kind of related to updating an attacker updating or installing files onto your operating system. So those things really go out of the door. And we actually blogged about one. This probably came out last year sometime. It was a runc vulnerability that and I have posted the link there, so you can go ahead and read that blog. So the blog actually explains on how the exploit is. It has an attack script, and then it shows on how it affects a traditional OS, and how Flatcar is not really affected due to its immutable nature. And the third thing is automatic update. So this is more like, a lot of times it's not really about the vulnerabilities, rather like a patch came out, but the person the or the like the patch was not really applied to the systems. So that's when the whole infrastructure gets vulnerable. So that's where the automatic updates comes into place. So you have once and every time a release is done, your systems get automatically updated, and the the CVs and whatever issues are there gets automatically fixed. And this all happens behind the scenes. And even like if you really don't want that update, you can easily like uh, roll back. There's a rollback partition, so you can easily roll back to the previous version. Even if it fails, it's automatically rollbacks to the previous version. So Yeah, so now moving ahead, now that we know what is container Linux, what are the kind of base components of container Linux, we move ahead on like how the Flatcar Linux was born and how things come into play. So um, uh, the Flatcar or CoreOS container Linux was primarily based on Gentoo. It's Gentoo based, and we fetch all our packages, the minimal set of packages from Gentoo. So you have all the evils files and stuff to build Flatcar container Linux, and then you have the update mechanism, and even like I would say like when container Linux, CoreOS container Linux was born, it was kind of born out of Chrome OS or Chromium OS. So it was essentially a fork of it, and we also take the update mechanism from there, and thus CoreOS container Linux was born, and Flatcar container Linux is just a direct fork of CoreOS container Linux. Now you might be asking like, but why Flatcar? Is it like a flat, like a compressed car or something like that? But the essentially the meaning of flat car is the railway rolling stock. So you have those flatbeds, kind of a structure on which you put the containers on. So that's from where the idea came into play. So you have like the locomotive, the engine part. So basically you have locomotive, and then you have the flat car on which you put deploy the containers. So that's how the name came into place. This is one of the questions we usually get asked. uh, yeah, so now talking about like how the distribution is in place. So we have initially, like when in CoreOS container Linux, you had like three channels, which was alpha, beta, and stable. But we brought in a new channel called Edge, which is primarily experimental. Anything that we really like to experiment on, or something really good happening in the Linux community, or some or container community. So Edge is a place, experimental bed for us, and all the other things are usually rolled over from alpha, beta, and stable. So we have a regular cadence of that lines. um, all the images that you have are publicly available. So we release a lot of, like, they are so they are there on Azure, Equinix, Metal Watch, which was like formerly known as like Packet. Then you have on AWS and GCP, so, and other cloud providers as well. But they are also there, like the all, if in case like it's not there on that particular cloud provider, you can always go to like the channel dot release dot flatcarlinux dot net. So basically, like if you want alpha images, then you, it's like alpha dot release dot flatcarlinux dot net. So if you go there, you will find all the images, be even if you have QM images, so you can like try out things. And yeah, so they are categorized by channel, so it's easy for you to find as well. So the next thing is the update server. So as I told, like the automatic updates are in place. So those are actually pushed through this thing called Kinfolk update service, which I'll be talking in the next slide. It's a public instance. So and yeah, so talking about the Kinfolk update service more. So it's kind of like if you have used the Android mobile phone, so you regularly get updates, right? So it's not really that you have to go and install a OS or something. The OS generally gets automatic updates, so it follows kind of the same principle. And this content Linux had this project called, I guess the name was Code Update. But then if I recall correctly, it was not open source. But then Kinfolk built a similar tool called Nebraska. The name of the service is called Nebraska, and made it open source. So it's totally 100% open source, and you can actually host on prem. We actually had a ticket created today where someone was asking for a local instance, or something like a mirror. So that is kind of a possible through this, through, because it's open source, you can totally create it, and you can totally tinker around. Like we basically update the payload and stuff, and you see all the machines in there, and you can basically rate control, like create deployment groups on where to update and do monitoring stuffs and all in this, so you get a more advanced lookout on how the whole deployment of the update goes into your systems. So this is one project, this is which is like in very highly in active. So this is a project to check out. The project, as I told, the name is Nebraska. So the current status, talking about like when as I told, like in May 2020 the project, the Chorus project was deprecated, but we forked out for some time now. But with the current status is that now it Skinfolk started building a kind of a dedicated team last year. Now it has like a dedicated team working on Flatcar contain Linux full time. There is a complete build and test infrastructure in place, which was sponsored by Equinix Metal, and we really thank them for their support. And Flatcar Linux, like we have the stable version that ships kernel 5.4, which is the LTS kernel, and then you have stable shipping the system to 246, which was, I guess, in if you talk of container Linux, they had 242 or 241, but then after taking it over we started upgrading it, and right now it's on stable we have 246, and today there's a release on the way which will be shipping 247. There is like a lot of people who are talking of eppf support, so there's a user space eppf tooling support in there. And we have been independent, like when towards around last year, around January, the project started independently maintaining the channel, so it stopped till May. We were pulling all the upstream updates, but contain Linux essentially stopped updating the packages probably soon after they uh, were acquired by Red Hat. And that's when like Flatcar started slowly updating the packages and started independently doing it. They pulled all the packages upstream changes till May, but after that it was totally by on our own. Last year around Feb, like alpha was on was independently maintained, and slowly like before May everything was in every channel was like independently maintained and updated. And after May we had like a lot of releases. If you go to our release page, you can see that we have a 24/7 support infrastructure in place, and we have like a lot of customers who are using that on their clusters. And we are integrated into multiple platforms. I have like a big image coming up with the platforms we support, but we are working on to integrate more, and we are getting a very broad community adoption. And that shows from the issues that get filed, I would say. So yeah, so the next big thing I would say is essentially we started to something we got um, a feedback was like because content Linux was very high paced, like you had like updates in a couple of weeks or maybe days. So but there were customers who probably needed stability for a long time, so that's when like Flatcar Linux came. So Flatcar content Linux would be offering like a LTS support. It would be like a guaranteeing 18 months support life cycle. And usually like because like our alpha goes out in like 2 weeks, and then probably few 4 weeks we have beta, and then 2 months is like stable. But those folks or companies who really want that longer support cycle would be getting like a can off go for LTS support. And then we are also offering, there is an offering on various cloud providers, that is like a Flatcar Pro, um, which essentially gives, like right now it's on Azure, GC, Google Cloud, and AWS, but we will be expanding to more. But I can tell from like in Azure we have like the tuned kernel in place, and then we have like GPU support for the GPU instances, and we are working on like a Hyper-V telemetry support on there, so that you can you see how things are if things go wrong during the boot time, and support for like the Azure accelerated networking. So these are all will be included in like Flatcar Pro and Flatcar LTS, and these are things that uh, basically expanded the offerings of what Flatcar had from just the instances that you can just spin up for free. So the next thing is like, as I told, like we have a bunch of supported platforms, like we have DigitalOcean, AWS, VMware and stuff. So there are a couple of work that hasn't happening, so you can like probably check out the Flatcar repos to see how the work has been happening. Um, so whichever platform you are, you would probably have Flatcar there. If not, you can always go ahead and create a issue, and we'll try to have that available in that cloud provider. The next thing is about the adoption. So so if you see like the graph essentially tells the adoption that happens, though they are not, the numbers are not there, but I can tell like it's really a steep climb. Like the growth was really huge because CoreOS was getting uh, deprecated, and around January last year the spikes really took off, and because of the seamless integration, like it's like a drop in replacement, like since the mechanism is same. So uh, you have like the update server pushing the updates, and there's a update service that runs on your local machines that pulls it and updates your system. So basically, since the core mechanism is same, so you just change the server URL from CoreOS to Flatcar, and you are done. So the next time the payload would be pulled down from the Flatcar servers, and your system would be upgraded and migrated at the same time to Flatcar. And from there, it's like pulling the Flatcar changes. It's as simple as that. And we are seeing a bunch of adoptions around the world as well. Now, what is there for the future? So what Flatcar uh, plans are there for the future in term from Kinfolk side? So we plan to have a like a public roadmap, like speech for people to see, right, and maintained in open, so have more openness and bring in more community perspective. And then you have like a updated kernel. So as I told, like since CoreOS stopped updating the packages, right now we are mostly in the stage to upgrade the packages, all the packages to a very updated stage. So if you see our release notes, you'll see like most of the change updates that you get are mostly like there are features, but there are also updates that are happening, and over the next few months this will be continuing, and then there will be more support coming in. And but like from the kernel side, like 5.10 is already in alpha, 5.9 is in beta. As I told earlier that we'll be having updated system d 247 is already there, will be released today. And we also got a lot of requests, like people really wanted a better debugging support to see what went wrong. That's where like the observability tools like the Hyper-V telemetry things also comes in place, and or this thing as a kdump support. um, and since we planned the idea of Flatcar is to have like a security first container operating system. So there would be like a security updates going on first, and then and also try to stay up to date with the upstream releases, which a lot of time are like the security updates coming in. uh we have like C group 3.2 plan changes coming ahead. It's already enabled on Edge. As I told, it's the experimental channel. So we are planning to bring that to the other channels as well. And the last thing about the community part, like we are really open to your ideas, and we really try to implement it whenever there's a possibility. So if you have an idea, do share it on the Flatcar issues. We have uh, repo github.com/kinfolk/flatcar. you can go ahead, create issues there, and you be sure you will be heard. And yeah, so moving ahead, like a lot of folks, like since the time chorus was born, a lot of folks have been working on the Linux space to make it suitable for containers, or I would say rather say that like a lot of people are working on to make container operating systems, but and I was reading today itself about a blog about the future of Linux, and it really looked good. Like because at the end of the day, it's an open source community, so everything benefits each other. And I would say like one of the thing would be like the spirit of revolution that was like started by CoreOS continues to live through the source of Flatcar. And this is one thing that like one tweet that Kelsey did probably around in July when uh, code was deprecated. So yeah, so finally ending the slide with the chorus legacies. uh, Kinfolk is proud to take ahead with the chorus spirit still lives on through Locomotive and Flatcar. And since the community is the like we are trying to build communities, try to update docs, there are a lot of issues that come in. So if you're looking into contributing, like putting your first patch in, wanting to know how an OS works, or more on those lines, like so feel free to like come ahead, come we have a IRC channel, we are there on GitHub, so feel free to come there and help like contribute. So we are happy to help you with landing your first patch or contributing, or whatever lines we can. So yeah, and yeah, that's the end of the slide. So if you have any questions, we can take it now. And if you have like if you want to take the questions offline, these are my like at the rate Udoka is my Twitter handle, and other two are my email ID, so feel free to contact me over there as well.
Thank you, Sayan, for your wonderful talk today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now we can head over, like, we can go to breakout rooms and socialize over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the breakout room is different, or
Actually, I also don't know. Yeah, it will be
so
created, or we can just continue over here only. Not an issue. Well, because we have less participants, participant can go with asking you questions, and probably you should answer them.
I'll then
Right?
stop sharing my slides then. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes, so I have the first question whenever Sayan is ready.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yep, Sayan, so what was the part when you said that you can migrate from a container Linux to a Flatcar? I mean, just say that I have a running Kubernetes system and I have access to the control plane. Now I want to move the container Linux that it's already using to Flatcar. So what was that process?
Yeah, so there is so basically what I told was like container Linux, the architecture of container Linux, because it's a direct fork. So essentially the architecture is totally same. So there's an update servers that pushes the update, and there is the OS on your machine. So there is a payload URL that you need to configure. There's a etc conf, I forgot the conf file path, but there is actually a blog on that. But you basically update the part from CoreOS to Flatcar, and that change would basically what the up there's a system d update service running, so it will the next time it tries to fetch the update payload, it would pull the updates from Flatcar server instead of CoreOS servers. And once it pulls from the Flatcar servers, it will directly install the required changes and stuff on your machine, and the system would be migrated to Flatcar.
Okay, and how different is locomotive except the flat car chains?
Sorry, I did not get your question. Can you repeat?
Yeah, so locomotive is a Kubernetes distribution that the company has developed, right?
Right, right.
Right. So except for the flat car container Linux, what else is different in locomotive?
Locomotive is a Kubernetes distro. I cannot say a lot on that because I don't work on that. But uh, Kul- Locomotive Flatcar is one of the OS that Locomotive works on, but then it works on other OSs as well. So it's a Kubernetes distribution. Flatcar is kind of a Linux distribution, like compared to uh, what do you say, like Ubuntu or Fedora Core OS on that lines.
Okay, I get it. And what is the solution that you guys are providing for cloud providers for managed Kubernetes?
Uh, hmm. I don't know about that. I might need to check on that. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to ask something to Sayan?
So I have one more question if no one's going next.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so what is the business model that Kinfolk works on?
So we have like enterprise customers, and so if you want support, then you can always like spawn your instances on Flatcar and go that route. But then if you want the support of, then you basically go through the whole SLA and stuff. Like we will basically be providing the support if something goes wrong, and basically other help needed. And the other point that we are bringing in is the two things that I talked is the Flatcar LTS and the Flatcar Pro. So those are again like would be the business model. Like those are paid plans.
Okay, and so you are not a cloud provider, but you are a software provider for the cloud, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Sayan, this is Vinayak here. Is there a, open source version available to try of Flatcar?
Yes, like as I said, like everything is open source. Maybe like I'll just share like a couple of pages so that you can see.
Okay, is it a Docker image or something?
Uh, no, it's not a Docker image, but it's a full blown operating system. But there are few ways through which you can have it through a Docker image, or basically there is a developer container that we ship.
Okay.
Let me share my screen once again. So is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Yeah, so this is the page, and if you go to releases on top, then you'll see whichever versions are currently getting released. Like this, as I was giving the no, okay, 12 is in progress. So as I was telling during the talk, if you go to this, the AMD 64, which is the x86, and the ARM is still in experimental phase. That's why it's just in alpha. But if you click on those AMD 64, so you'll be taken down to that particular version, like as I told, like the releases page. So in here you see like we have all the AMIs and stuff, and then other cloud providers like CloudStack, DigitalOcean, Exascale. So we build images for all these platforms. uh, for a general person like me, like if I want to try, I'll usually search for like QEMU. There is a like QEMU image, and then there's a QEMU shell script file. So using these two, you can essentially boot up a Flatcar image and try out, see things, how things works.
Okay.
Because I'm sharing my screen, I'll just search like migrating from CoreOS to Flatcar. Yeah, so if you go to this, like as talking before, uh, so essentially like there is a script. So this is the script. So if you call this one, I'll open this as well. Okay, so we change this. So I'll just search for this on Google. Yeah, there's someone else, but this works. So this is like so as I was telling, like you just update this server thing to like public.update of flatcar linux.net with the update value, and from the next release it just pulls from this particular instance. So even if you like something, if you want to try this thing, I would say I was talking about this instance. So if you go to so here you see, I'll just increase the font size a bit. So you see here it's all the directories are created by version. So you can, sorry, so you can create a instance from an older version, and you'll see like a few minutes down the line, after like the reboot cycle is out, after 5 minutes or 10 minutes, so after that your instance would be updated to the latest version. And yeah, so to answer your question, you can just go here, try the images out, and if you would like to contribute then or file issues, then this is the place to do it. So it's kinfolk slash flatcar. So we have issues in here. You can file issues, or if you want to contribute, uh, we have our developer guide. We recently revamped our docs, uh, so you can find more information there as well. Yeah.
Okay, Sayan, thank you.
Yeah.
Sayan, I have one question. This is Mead.
Sure. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. So, considering that this AMIs already come with eBPF based uh, monitoring system, but let's say when I have another monitoring tools like consider New Relic or Datadog or any other tool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How will the performance, impact change with regards to the Linux containers or any other OS?
I did not get your question properly. So so you are saying like if you use uh, containers on like any OS kind of a thing, so how the New Relic thing would have an impact on that?
Yeah, because considering we have to bake it under with this AMI, right?
Right. Okay.
So injecting the agents like
Right.
monitoring
Yeah.
agents
Right.
with this, how will the performance improve with regards to the other native Linux containers?
I'm not really sure because I've not tested it personally, but I would say like if it's baked in, then
Because both of them ideally work on the same mechanism of eBPF, right?
right.
So, what would be an added advantage that I get by choosing this?
So see, one of the thing I would like to mention here is like in Flatcar, essentially everything runs on a container, so there is no package manager of its own. Like
Mm-hmm.
in Fedora, you have like a DNF. In Ubuntu, you have app. So Flatcar
Yeah.
really does not have any package manager. So anything we ship is what we ship, and you have to use those things and use a container. So basically on top of it, you run
Mm-hmm.
your containers, and it's basically like this, the thing that you're running would mm, uh, w- the agent and all would be running as a like you cannot directly install that on Flatcar.
Okay, got it. Got it. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
So what happens when you are in need of installing a package and that package is unfortunately not available on Flatcar? So I mean the stuff like VPN and all, right? If your containers on the node have to contact a service which only works over a VPN, so then how do you solve that problem?
Yeah, those are the things I would say, like everything like runs on a container. Like there is a talk, essentially like everything you can do through a container. And like right now I'm using a Fedora system, but before this I used to use this OS called Silverblue, which was again like around the same ideology. And but I literally ran everything on containers. So like you build a container and then try to run over it. You have like slash usr is not writable, but then you can override the changes, put in etc, and then use it. And yeah, so that's it. Yeah, I would say.
Oh, okay. So that's a good point actually. So if there is a container for that, then you're able to solve it because any container can run on Flatcar because it is with the Open Container Initiative.
Right.
So if there is a container, you will be able to run it. So that's a good philosophy. Good.
Yeah, so I see two questions. So one question on chat I see as like advantages of using Flatcar over current Linux containers. Uh, so this is kind of like, I would say again, like it's kind of different from Linux containers. So containers basically, as I told, like Flatcar is the basically the bed of it, and on top of it you place the containers. And so it's just think of it as like, suppose you just pick Ubuntu and then start running containers on it. And then Flatcar just replaces that with a different ideology of non-writable OS and auto update and all those things in place. It's that ideology. And so that you have like OS, the OS is primarily targeted for containers. Then there's another questions which is like about vulnerability patching. So do you mean like um, if there's a vulnerability and we don't have the update, so what happens there? Yeah, so s- we, whenever there's a vulnerability, we keep a strict like we are on the OS Linux OS security mailing list, so we do get other updates and we try to push the vulnerability as soon as possible. Like today's update would have the, yeah, so yesterday if you have seen the sudo one, so with today's update the sudo things is already patched. So um, we usually have updates, but it's very like not every, I would say like every package has the same way, but if there's a vulnerability, usually we get questions asked on IRC, and we usually try to help them trying to find a way how they can fix that vulnerability. But our focus is always like we have like GitHub actions in place, so whenever there's a kernel update, it's automatically creates a PR for it. So and for other packages, we get the notification it's updated and we push out a release.
Any other question? I think all are done with their questioning. So let's conclude this meetup. And
Yeah.
yeah, and thank you, San, for such a lovely conversation and the information shared by you. Thank you so much. We hope we heard from
Yeah.
you again. Probably the other
Sure.
tool come up with other tool next time,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
right?
And thank you. Thanks a lot
Yeah,
for having me.
that's
Yeah.
all. Thank you. Thank you all.